This is our fifth Eyewitness to History report of reminiscences of famous events that I witnessed. Today we're going to talk about the explosion of the U.S. Space Shuttle Challenger on January the 28th, 1986. This was a real big deal because it was the first time a civilian, in this case a teacher, was going to be going up in the space shuttle. And there was a national contest and search for 2 years to choose the candidate. So in 1984, 2 years previously, both I and my two best friends, Rick McKay and Joe Masonic, had applied to be the Illinois candidates. Ultimately, they picked 2 teachers from each state, each of the 50 states, and from there they came down with a list of 10. And finally they chose the first place winner as Krista McAuliffe from New Hampshire. Now at the time in 1986, I was teaching 5th grade at Sunnydale School in Streamwood, Illinois. And I remember this particular space shuttle flight had been plagued with delays of the launch, where they would have all of the people and all of the media and television cameras, Krista McAuliffe's parents, her students watching live in the classroom. And this kept being delayed at the last second for one reason or another. And I believe there was 2 or 3 different delays. And so people were getting kind of frustrated with this. And I remember each time the launch was going to take place, I would bring in the television on a big cart into my classroom, and we would stop what we were doing and get ready to watch this historic flight of the first teacher in space. Well, after so many cancellations, it just became so frustrating that when January 28th came around, I didn't even put the television in the classroom, just assuming they would cancel it. Now the reason I thought this was because it was very cold that day at Cape Canaveral, Florida, unusually cold, and there was ice and stuff on the space craft, and I thought for sure they were going to cancel it due to the cold weather. Well, one of my co-workers, fellow teachers in my classroom pod, which was a large room divided into 3 sections with movable curtains, she decided to go ahead and have the flight watched by her kids on TV, just in case they didn't cancel it. So around 10:35 or so in the morning, I could hear her turning on the TV through the curtain, and I continued with whatever I was teaching with my lesson. And then all of a sudden she opened the curtain up and she said, Mr. K, which was my teacher nickname for Mr. Karolewski, you might want to see this. I think something's happened. So she pushed the curtain all the way open so that both I and all of my students could turn their seats and watch. And sure enough, they were showing that the craft had exploded about 70 seconds into the flight, and you could see the reaction of Krista McAuliffe's parents and the people on the ground, and you could tell NASA was totally unprepared and shocked for what had happened. And I knew watching the footage that these people were instantly killed. There was no way that anyone could survive something like that. So they kept showing the replay over and over again, and it was just horrifying because, you know, many people in the United States had seen this live, were watching this live on TV, and this was a really black day for the whole NASA space program. People were just shocked, and later on it was determined that the weather was so cold, that unusual Florida day, that the rubber seal called an O-ring on one of the fuel tanks had contracted because of the cold, and this caused a leak, and so flames were allowed to come up and cause the entire fuel tanks to explode, therefore blowing up the entire space shuttle. So it was a very tragic day, and there was all sorts of memorial services and so forth, and this put the NASA space program back many years as they reevaluated all of their safety procedures and things like that. Later on in 1997, I did get a chance to go to teacher space camp at my own expense for a week in Huntsville, Alabama, and I did undergo my childhood wish, which was to go to astronaut training, and we did all sorts of training and simulations, and it was very enjoyable. I was with a group of teachers from across the United States, a team of about 20 people, and then we were broken into smaller teams. And I was actually chosen to be the commander of the Space Shuttle Endeavour. This was a simulation machine that was actually used by real astronauts, and we were put inside there, and I was given all of these manuals the night before to study, and I had my co-pilot with me and in a crew of 4, and we were locked inside of the simulator for 4 hours, for about 2.5 hours, and it was very exciting, and we had to react to different emergencies, and we did them all successfully, and I got them quote-unquote back on Earth safely. So that was a good closure to that outer space wish as a child. One other thing I'll add is after my children and I, my students and I watched the space shuttle explode, at recess time a little later, several students came up to me because they knew I had applied for teacher in space, and they said, "Mr. Karolewski, I'm just so glad that you weren't chosen to be there, because you wouldn't be alive anymore." And I thought about that, what they had said, and yeah, it was very, very true. So that's all for the reminiscences of that.